Good morning, everybody. We're ready to. That's actually for the service this morning, so don't worry about the board. I'm not using it for Sunday school, it's for the service. Do we need to talk after service? All right, glad you're all here. We are in the book of Joshua this morning. How many of you saw the really, actually important big news of the week this week? There was, yeah, right. I believe that. There we go. The Patriots elected not to pick up Vince Wilfork's option, and so he is a free agent. I agree. I'm a Wilfork fan. My only hope, and you say, Pastor, wasn't there more important stories in the news this week? I'm not sure there was. But my only hope is that Bill Belichick has an innate sense of knowing when a player has crossed over their zenith, is on the downside of their career. And so my hope is that he knows what he's doing. Joshua chapter 1 is a similar moment, and I only brought it up really for that. Joshua chapter 1, we run into a similar moment. We talked last week. Moses died. God buried him, which God actually killed him too, so I guess it works out pretty well. He died and then God buried him. Moses and God were the only ones there, and Moses was up healthy. So, take it however you want to see it. But he buried Moses and Moses died. So we get to Joshua chapter 1, and we're moving on to Joshua, who had been named already as the leader. And we'll read verse 1, but verse 2 is where I really want to get, because it just sums up God's view of human leadership in a nutshell. So we'll start with 1. After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord, it came to pass that the Lord spoke to Joshua, the son of Nun, Moses' assistant, saying, Moses, my servant, is dead. That's it. That's wow. Moses, my servant, is dead. Now, therefore, arise, go over this Jordan, you and all the people, to the land which I am giving to them, the children of Israel. Moses, my servant, is dead. Turn the page. That's almost feels like not picking up Wilfork's option. Okay, yeah, he was great. He was awesome. Next. It's amazing. It's almost a disregard, but what could God really say about Moses? That we are 4,000 years later, still talking about this guy Moses. That he was an impressive man is unquestionable. That he was a man is unquestionable. He was God's servant, and God said, my servant, he's gone. You're up. And history has always just been a succession of God's servants, each standing up in their own generation to serve God. And at the end of their service, they enter their reward, but God just raises up the next person, and the work keeps going on. Who is indispensable to any work of God? Nobody. If Moses is not indispensable, historically speaking, he's probably, next to Paul, one of the two most indispensable people you can imagine, both of whom are quite dead. They lived, they did their job, they passed on, and the baton got passed to the next person. So, you could read verse 2 in a lot of different ways. It depends on my mood, how it strikes me. Sometimes it's very fatalistic, like, oh, great, that's it? Moses, he's dead, move on. Where am I going to rate in this process? Except it's going to be, he's dead, move on. My sons or somebody else in their generation is going to step forward and carry the baton the next lap. But at the same time, Moses, my servant, he was my servant. And what else could you say? What else could you hope to have said? I think that sums it up nicely. That was Moses' goal as a man, was to serve God. And God said, Moses, my servant, he's dead. Let's go. And so it does kind of very quickly sum up the life of a person, because once you start opening that can to say, how can we describe the life of Moses? You need a bigger book. To get it all done. So the baton gets passed from Moses to Joshua. This is God's will, it's God's doing, it's God's plan, and they move on to the next phase. And so we move from the Exodus, really, because everything that we've covered since probably the fall, has just been the Exodus. And so really over the spring quarter here, just kind of give you a high-level look at where we're going. We're going to talk about the conquest of Canaan and the Judges. We're actually going to take off the summer. You like summers off from school? Seems like a good fit. And then in the fall, we'll pick up in the kingdom era. So we'll finish up the Judges era, and we'll pause and then jump into the next. So give you kind of a high level plan of where we're heading. So Joshua chapter 1, anyway, where we are. I just read verse 2. So Brother Bob, I'll kick it to you for verse 3. All right, question here. Thinking about that, without drawing a map for you, though I could, we get a description here of some boundaries. Did you catch what those boundaries were? Other than big names. What's the eastern boundary that God gave them? Okay, the Euphrates River. What's the western boundary? The Hittites is south and east. No, Lebanon is north. The Great Sea, the sea. Okay, turns out I'm going to use this. Okay. So if we were to think about Greece around down this way, there's the Nile right here. Let's see, right about here. There's Jerusalem there. All right, so Euphrates over here, Tigris and the Euphrates. The Red Sea is just there. And let's see. There is that's the Red Sea. That's the Persian Gulf. All right, so if you were to look at, this is just a sketch map, obviously, of the land. This is all Greece and stuff over here. You get the boot of Italy. Over here, whatever. Anyway, so over here you have the Euphrates River, you have the Mediterranean Sea, or the Great Sea as it's called here. Same place, same sea. You get Lebanon to the north. There's a mountainous region up in this general vicinity. And the Hittites in the south, not quite that far south, over about here. And so God describes Israel as that. Does it ever look like that to your knowledge? Today, at its narrowest point, Israel, the nation, is about 9 miles wide at its narrowest point. There's a sliver of land that, it's like, pilots taking off, trying to stay in Israeli airspace. It's like constant battle maneuvers just to stay inside the map. Because if you've ever looked, the land is all broken up, especially once you take, the West Bank and the Gaza Strip and all that. You think about why do the Israelites think that they should have all of that land? Because they should. It's really that. Yeah, it really is that clear. You think about, everybody talks about, wanting to go Israel back to the pre-1967 borders. We fail to remember in 1967 that the Arab nations declared war on Israel, not the other way around. The Palestinians voluntarily left their land so that they were out of the hostility zone. The promise of the Arab nations was, when we're done kicking Israel's butt, you can have the whole thing. They left. Israel conquered. Israel won the war. That really wasn't in their plan. And they gained a lot of territory in the process. Any of that their fault? No. So should they have to give it back? I don't think so. I don't see us giving back Canada, Texas. We didn't quite take, although we did take parts of it. I don't see us giving back Texas, or I don't see us, was it a great deal that we bought Manhattan from the Indian tribes from? No, but are we giving it back? Not exactly, So, but somehow Israel's supposed to give back their land. It makes no sense when you think about it in real, actual terms, and you start in. really putting history into this process and stuff. It gets really funky when you do that. The actual facts just are mind-numbing. So, but that is, and this is abroad, and we'll get a description in several places about the territory that God had promised to Israel. It's not land that they ever fully possessed. But you think about it, the promise that God made to Abraham in the book of Genesis, everywhere you place your feet is your land. And that's reiterated in what we just read here. Every place you place your feet is your land. Abraham started off over here in Ur of the Chaldees between the Tigris and Euphrates River. And he walked up along the river to get to Haran, and then he headed west across the mountainous area until he got into the land of Canaan. Everywhere you put the soles of your feet, that's yours. His soles of his feet started in Ur. And so as you read this particular allocation of Israel's territory, God says, look, everything from the river Euphrates all the way over to the Great Sea, that's yours. That's the land that God has promised them. It is not land that they have ever yet fully possessed. But if you look at Scripture and you keep reading all the way to the end of the book, what you find is eventually they will. Because God said, that is your land. That is something that he promised to them. It's something he gave to them. They never fully owned it, but they one day will. So just kind of give you a sense of the borders that we're talking about there. Oh, Smurf, we need to run. All right. 5, thank you. This book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate in it day and night, that you may observe to do according to all that is written in it. For then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have good success. So not a bad deal that God kind of starts off this, Joshua's time as leading people with a kind of a one-man pep rally. He's like, you're ready, you're able, keep walking on the course that I give you, keep following what I've revealed, and you'll make it. And so there's a lot in there that we could spend a lot of time on. I think is really better for us on a personal level to spend some time in those thoughts and going, wow, this is what it takes to be successful. And that's what God gave him. So we'll jump into 10. Okay, so they are, if you were to think about where they are currently on my rough map, they are right about here. Jericho is just the other side of the river. The first time they came to the land of Israel, you remember 40 years ago, they were here. They actually weren't here. They were coming up this way. Kadesh is somewhere in this area here, just to kind of give you a broad sense of where we are. And so here they are. They're at Jericho. 3 days from now, we're marching out. Get things ready to go. Until the Lord has given your brethren rest, as he gave you, and they also have taken possession of the land which the Lord your God is giving them. Then you shall return to the land of your possession and enjoy it, which Moses, the Lord's servant, gave you on this side of Jordan toward the sunrise. So there we have kind of a historical reference. We didn't cover that particular story as we're going through Exodus. But Reuben, Gad, and half tribe of Manasseh actually petitioned Moses for land on the western side of the Jordan River. So we typically think, in New Testament terms, Israel is is on the eastern side of the Jordan River. There was actually 2.5 tribes. Their inheritance was on the western bank of the Jordan River. So here they are. They're opposite Jericho. They're on the western side of the Jordan River. They're in land that they already possess. This is the possession of Reuben, Gad, and half tribe of Manasseh. They're already there. The agreement was that Moses made with the tribes was, you may have this land, but understand, when our armies cross the Jordan River to secure the rest of the land that God is giving us, you're going to fight too. So we're not exempting the armies of 2.5 tribes. You get to go with us. Your folks can stay home. Your livestock can stay home. But your army goes with us. And when we're done, then you could go back. And so that's what Joshua was just reminding them. Look, you're in your land, but your armies are going with the rest of us across the Jordan here. Do we have time to start Jericho? Well, maybe if I sum it up instead of read it up. All right, so we'll go for homework. We'll go read chapter 2. Let me just sum up the story here because I don't want to miss it, and I think your kids are getting it. So here they are. They're opposite, not the whole story of Jericho, just the first part of it. So here they are. They're opposite Jericho. Before they actually cross into the land, Joshua does something that Moses did to ill effect. He sends in spies, which, it's from a tactical perspective makes perfect sense. You need to kind of get a feel for the land that's there. Joshua is a military guy. He understands tactics. He's fought wars. He wants to know what he's up against. And so he sends in a couple spies. They go into the city of Jericho. What they find as they get into the city of Jericho is that everybody in the city of Jericho is already freaking out of their mind. They are already scared to death that, you could see from the walls of Jericho the armies of Israel. They're there. Everybody knows where Israel is. You figure if they were 2.5 million people 40 years ago, and none of their shoes wore out, and they just had, deaths and births for 40 years, the broad strokes of things, they're at least probably 2.5 million. That's a very conservative number. The more probable number is somewhere closer to 4 or 5 million people. Can you hide that many people? Or where can you hide that many people? They're just there in the plains. They're wherever they can find place to be. Everybody in the land of Canaan knows where Israel is, and most of the people in Canaan know where Israel is going. And so the people in Jericho are already freaked out of their minds. And so that's what the two spies, they're there, they're learning that the people, as much as people in Israel wanted to be afraid of Jericho and its walls and its army, everybody in Jericho is worried about the Israelites. They're worried about what's coming. They have a sense that their own demise is quick upon them. And so that's kind of where they are. The king of Jericho learns that these spies are here, there's somebody here. And so they start scouting throughout the city looking for these two Israelites, because the last thing you want is, enemy spies taking back good intelligence. And so he's, doing what kings should do, trying to eradicate the spies. The spies, it's almost humorous, but they happen upon a harlot's house. Go figure. How do these things just happen? Oops, I'm in a brothel. How'd that happen? I don't know. But that's where they ended up. And so they get to Rahab. Now, Rahab, interestingly enough, given her chosen profession, is aware of Israel, is aware that they're coming, and is aware of what that actually means for her, her country, her city. She understands that Jericho is to be the first to fall in this flood of Jewish occupation. And so she hides the spies, from the soldiers who are looking for them. And then she asks the spies. Her only thing that she asks for is, I don't want to die. Makes sense. I understand you're coming. I understand, the military attack and this is, you figure how long ago did we stop attacking civilians as military targets? As late as World War II, it was very popular still. You figure, carpet bombing London, carpet bombing, Germany, launching nuclear bombs in, Japan. We still attack civilian targets militarily all the way up through and including World War II and then beyond. So the fact that this was a non-military target, for many of the people who lived in Jericho was irrelevant. They understood they were all going to die. And she said, look, I don't want to die. I've helped you. Can you help me? And the spies make a deal with her. They said, we're going to go out of the city, and she lived right on the wall of the city, which is not the richer section, that's the poorer section. And we're going to drop you down by this cord, this red rope. I don't know where they got red rope, I have no idea, but that's what she had. And so they said, look, hang this red rope out of your window, gather your family, and whoever's in your house will be spared. We'll make sure everybody knows that you are a friend to our nation. And when we come in, we will make sure whoever's in this house with the red rope hanging down on the city wall doesn't get killed. So that's the deal. Strange deal. There's a lot of strange things in this story. But that's the deal that they were struck, and that's the deal that actually was preserved. That God actually spared this woman in the process of entering the land, which is really cool when you think about, if you know the story ahead, what's coming next, what happens to the walls of Jericho. Most of them. Just one rickety section standing up at the end of that mess, because that's where her and her family was. So even God chose to bind himself by the promise made by these two spies coming in. And let's see, that takes us all the way to the end of chapter 2, which is where I was trying to get to. So, any questions, comments? There was a lot more in detail in chapter 2. You should read it. That was definitely the Reader's Digest version. Does anybody read Reader's Digest anymore? Yeah, used to. That's how we all think of Reader's Digest. I don't know. Do they have a blog now? I just want the funny bits. Yeah, reading is hard to do when there's so much TV to watch. And so many games to play. Yeah. Sweet. I'm done by peanut butter and jelly time. All right. Questions, comments? No? Yes? All right, let me pray and we'll move on. Father, we love you. We thank you for the day. Father, we thank you for this word that we can read in Joshua, understanding that all of this was recorded, transmitted to us for our benefit. Father, as we see Joshua raising up as a leader, may we take courage from the same things that you gave him to take courage from, that you have called us, that you've chosen us, that you've placed us in this place, in this time to do your will, that we can be strong and we can be of good courage, that we need to meditate on your word day and night, for in them we find both moral, physical, spiritual strength that we need to face life that you've given us and to be victorious. And so, Father, help us to see that. Lord, even from the story there in Jericho, help us to take heart from that, knowing that even the people that we would probably look down upon or we would think ill of, Lord, you still value them, treasure them, and want to reach them. And help us to see that as a great story of redemption that it is. Father, for the hour that lay ahead, would you meet with us? Would you empower and then receive our songs of worship? Lord, would you enable us to hear your word and to apply it? Well, thank you in Jesus' good name.